Hello, good morning everyone. I'm Dr. Shai FERARO. I'm the secretary of the Israeli Association for the Study of Religions, and welcome to our first of two sessions on Holy Lands and religious pluralism in Israel. We have three presenters here today, and the first one is Dr. Nicole BAUER, who studies sociology, anthropology, and philosophy with a special focus on the sociology of religion at the Karl Franz University, right, in Graz, in Austria. She would talk to us today on between spiritual pilgrimage and religious tourism, the construction of sacred space in contemporary Kabbalistic movements. The floor is yours.
So, thank you, Shai, for introducing me. I'm very happy to be here. What I will do today is I will present a part of my doctoral thesis I finished 2015 about Kabbalah and religious identity, and I analyzed the German development of the popular Kabbalah Centre. And what I will do today, I will show how the Kabbalah Centre constructs sacred spaces by using places of the Jewish tradition and how it commodifies the pilgrimage to these places by turning them to a way of a kind of religious adventure tourism. And what I will do today, first of all, I will give you a short overview about the theoretical framing of sacred space and spiritual pilgrimage in religious studies. Then I will also give you a very short overview about pilgrimage in Kabbalah in general, and then I will show you some examples of the Kabbalah Centre. And I will give you a lecture today. So, I start. Mircea Eliade first introduced the concept of sacred space to the study of religion in his study The Sacred and the Profane. In contrast to Rudolf Otto's concept of the sacred as the irrational experiences, the mysterium tremendum and the mysterium fascinans, Eliade wanted to reveal the phenomenon of the sacred in its whole variety, not only its irrational part. In doing so, he distinguishes the sacred from the profane. The first possible definition of the sacred is that it's the opposite of the profane, Eliade says. Eliade argues that the sacred manifests itself to humanity as hierophany, as something sacred shows itself to us. Eliade argues that the sacred manifests itself to humanity as hierophany. According to Eliade, the sacred shows itself in different objects and at different places that are part of our profane world. So you can read here the quote on the slide. Based on this thought, he develops a phenomenological understanding of sacred space. With the manifestation of the sacred, Eliade reasons the world is founded ontologically. He continues arguing that the traditional society's hierophanies from the center of the world, the so-called axis mundis, and as such act as orientation. Myth and different beliefs are entwined around those sacred places that serve as places in which communication with the transhuman world becomes possible and that connect this world with the heaven. So in contrast to Eliade's phenomenological understanding of sacred space, Jonathan Smith rejects the idea of an inherent religious power or sacredness of places. He defines a sacred place as a place of clarification, a focusing land where man and gods are held to be transparent to one another. It's a place where, as in all forms of communication, static and noise are decreased so that the exchange of information can be increased. That means a sacred space is primarily a place of communication and of exchanging information. It doesn't become sacred by an inherent force or essence, but by the attributions made it by people. So in Smith's words, the ordinary becomes significant, becomes sacred simply by being there. It becomes sacred by having our attention directed to it in a special way. So for Smith, all categories like sacred or profane are situational or relational. So recent research in the field of religious studies has pointed out to the economic implication and in part even violent political entanglements of sacred sites. Sacred places are no longer studied as places of epiphanies or hierophanies, but as heterogeneous social constructions with meaning exceeds the borders of the religious field. So, following this understanding, I will also use a discursive approach to sacred space in this paper today. So, sacredness is ascribed to some places for a variety of reasons. Socially determined stories are construed to fill the places with meaning. In this paper, I will show that the ascriptions to the sacred places depend on the context and that the stories and myths linked to those places vary. And then the other point is spiritual pilgrimage and religious tourism. So the intersection of religion with tourism hasn't been given much attention in research until recently. So the book Religionen im modernen Tourismus, Religious in Modern Tourism by the German scholar of religion Michael Stausberg, published in 2010, is one of the most comprehensive accounts of this topic. Stausberg distinguishes between religious or spiritual tourism motivated by religion, by spirituality, and tourism of religion. Under the term tourism of religion, Stausberg subsumes the traveling to a specific place that is considered to be sacred, for example, monasteries, graves, or also holy cities. So religious or spiritual tourism, on the other hand, is always related to the religious or spiritual motivation of the travelers. Stausberg points out that both forms of tourism may go along with each other, but don't always have to. That's very important. He understands pilgrimage as one form of religiously motivated traveling. So there's no general accepted definition of the term pilgrimage in research literature. And there are uncounted forms of pilgrimage, like pilgrimage to sacred places, pilgrimage in groups or alone, pilgrimage to certain sacred times, or out of special circumstances, and so on and so on. So pilgrimage may be understood as an individual form of being on the road with a focus on personal salvation. So in most cases, the destination of these journeys is a sacred place. So recent research about pilgrimage show that religious motivation of pilgrims decrease. So in this regard, Stausberg speaks of a spiritual quest that is detached from any specific religion and which is commercialized in the context of spiritual tourism. So neo-Kabbalistic groups like the Kabbalah Centre adopt pilgrimage to sacred places of Judaism, market them as a tourist event, and enrich them with secular meaning. Because pilgrimage has become part of a popular mass tourism phenomenon, a clear distinction between pilgrim and religious tourists can't be made. So intersections can be identified on different levels. So Edith and Victor Turner take up this perspective too in saying that a pilgrim is half a tourist. If a tourist is half a pilgrim, they express the view that a strict distinction between both groups can't be made. Following this thought, I would be reasonable to speak of religious tourists instead of pilgrims, because in this way it is possible to dissolve the distinction between tourist and pilgrim without denying the existence of touristic activities that aren't based on religious motivations. So accordingly, the participants of spiritual pilgrimages the Kabbalah Centre offers will be described as religious tourists. So pilgrimage in Kabbalah, it's only a really short overview. In Judaism, like in Islam and Christianity too, pilgrimage is tightly linked to the veneration of saints. In the Abrahamic religion, the prophets like Leer and the patriarchs are counted to the holy persons. The burial place of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob and their wives, each of us know this place, which are said to be located in Hebron, is one of the most important pilgrimage sites in Judaism, as well as in contemporary Kabbalistic groups like the Kabbalah Centre. So pilgrimage has a long tradition in Kabbalistic groups. In Kabbalistic tradition, burial sites were counted as a portal to God. For that reason, they were and still are popular as sacred space for pilgrimage. So this tradition is tightly linked to the Kabbalistic model of the soul. According to this model, the human soul consists of three aspects: the nefesh, the ruach, and neshama. Borrowing from soul theories of Plato, Saadia Gaon, declares Nefesh is the physical soul, the Ruach was the life of the emotion, and the Neshama was the divine soul. So the last aspect only exists in the soul of perfected human beings. So in the Zohar, an important book of the Kabbalah, this model of the soul is refined. It is said that in the moment of death, Ruach and Neshama leave Nefesh at the grave. The Ruach rises up to the celestial Garden of Eden, a paradise where it passes eternity in the company with the tzaddikim or the righteous saints who rejoice there on a highly basis. And the Neshama, having always been a spark of the divine, is absorbed by God, but the Nefesh, and that's the important point, stays at the grave, still being connected to Ruach and in the celestial Garden of Eden, and Neshama, which is united with God. So until today, pilgrimage to the graves of the holy persons, the tzaddikim or the rabbis, are popular in Kabbalistic and Jewish groups. At special occasions like the birthday or the death day of the saints, groups of Kabbalists meet to commemorate the saints and to connect with God. So one example I will present you is the grave of the Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneeson, the last Lubavitch Rebbe, a former Rebbe of the Chabad movement. After his death, his gravesite at the Montefiore Cemetery in New York City has developed into a sacred place, which is described in mass media as the American Western Wall, where thousands of people, including both, and that's also important, Jews and non-Jews, came to pray each week. According to the media, at his birthday, masses of people pilgrimaged to his grave. You can see it here on the slide. So, in the area around the cemetery is a Chabad organization house, which facilities for pilgrimages. A web page gives direction to the site, information on how to submit a letter to the Rebbe in person or by fax or email, and prescribes the conduct appropriate to the grave, including references to modest clothing. Here on the slide you can see this Chabad organization house. So religious and touristic motivations are mingled in Jewish pilgrimage too. For example, Aleph, the Alliance for Jewish Renewal, which has its headquarters in Philadelphia, offers an interfaith, as for example, an interfaith spiritual pilgrimage to the Holy Land that is described as follows. We will walk, explore, play, pray, learn, and open to the challenge of now. We will come not as a mere tourist, but as a visionaries, a group representing many faith traditions, engaging with one another's sacred story and leaving seeds of the wisdom that is deep economism. So like Aleph, the International Kabbalah Centre, and this is my last example, explicitly directs its offers to a non-Jewish audience and promotes them as spiritual pilgrimage to seekers of salvation, and so on. So I will continue with the Kabbalah Centre, and I will give you a really very, very short overview about the history of the Kabbalah Centre. So the Kabbalah Centre, you can see the Kabbalah Centre in Tel Aviv here on the slide, and also the Kabbalah Centre in Berlin. It's founded in the late 1960s by Philip Berg, originally understood itself as a Jewish Orthodox community. As such, in the beginning, it consisted of a small group of Jewish men who together studied Kabbalistic writings. So Berg's first intention was to bring secular Jews back to their religion by means of Kabbalah. So Berg, you can see him here also on the slide, saw himself as a successor to Yehuda Ashlag, an important Kabbalist of the 20th century, and by that enlisted himself in a line of famous Kabbalists. So by the end of the 1980s, a major change in the orientation of the Kabbalah Centre took place. From now on, the Kabbalah Centre addresses not only a Jewish audience, but a non-Jewish as well. So as an enterprise, the Kabbalah Centre advertises products like books, Kabbalah water, the red string, and that's very important for the presentation, religious experiences in form of spiritual events that usually take place on Jewish holidays like Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and so on. So, and the construction of Israel is very important in the construction of the collective identity in the Kabbalah Centre. So the Kabbalah Centre was originally a Jewish and an Israeli movement. Therefore, Israel is of paramount significance for the construction of a collective identity in the Kabbalah Centre. It often presents Israel as the center of the world, so it's a kind of axis mundis. Israel is not only an important place in the Kabbalah Centre, but also in Judaism, Islam, and Christianity too. However, in contrast to the description of Israel as place of the revelation of God or sacred place of the hierophany, one can find in those religions. In the Kabbalah Centre, secular references dominate the presentation of Israel. Accordingly, the sacredness of Israel is not legitimated with a religious tradition, but with a special energy of the place that is not specified in more detail. So Jerusalem and the Holy Temple, for example, are described as channels of energy, as metaphysical epicenter or center of the energy of the world. So at the website of the Kabbalah Centre New York, as you can see here on the slide, global adventures to sacred sites in Israel were offered, for example, in 2015. Besides the merging of tourist interest with spiritual motivations, the following quote of an advertisement promotes the exceptional position Israel holds in the construction of the Kabbalah centers. As you can see here on the slide, I don't read the quote. So the idea of Israel as center, as an especially energetic place, is adopted by the participants of the Kabbalah Centre too. So a good example for this reception of the ideas is probably the most famous Kabbalah Centre student. Everybody knows her, Madonna, who brought the Kabbalah Centre into public focus and helped making it more popular. So for instance, she spent some days with the Kabbalah Centre community in Tel Aviv in 2012. During these days, she attended a seminar given by Aitan Yadeni, her Kabbalah teacher, and visited various sacred sites like the city of Sfat in the northern part of Israel. So for Kabbalists, Sfat is an exceptionally meaningful place. There are situated some Kabbalistically significant burial sites, including that of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who is said to be the author of the Zohar, an important Kabbalistic text. So Madonna's identification with the Kabbalah Centre and her adoption of the center's language can be observed in many interviews of the pop star, as you can see here on the slide. So she speaks about the center of the energy. If there is peace in Israel, there will be peace in the world. And you find many other of such quotes in the media. So some of the Kabbalah Centre members I interviewed for my own research in the German Kabbalah Centre visited Israel too. Like Madonna, they took part in pilgrimages to sacred places and celebrated the Chabad or other Jewish holidays with the Tel Aviv community. And this journey to Israel is often, and that's very interesting, described by the interviewers as a turning point of their spiritual quest. So I have one example there. The man I interviewed said, when I now go to the Kabbalah Centre in Israel and I get into there, I will never forget, I somehow felt like being home. So the Kabbalah Centre presentation of Israel, in which references to Judaism become less important, while the use of a secular vocabulary increases, and the language used by the Kabbalah Centre participants, like Madonna, reflect the fact that the identification with Israel has more to do with the spiritual quest and the wish for self-improvement of the Kabbalah Centre students than with a really interest in Judaism. So this finding is backed by the French sociologist Véronique Altglas too, who points out in her book From Yoga to Kabbalah that Kabbalah is universalized and Jewish practices and ideas are decontextualized in the Kabbalah Centre. Okay. So another very popular, very recent example for the construction of sacred places by the Kabbalah Centre is the grave of Philip Berg, who died in 2013. Berg lived and died in Los Angeles, but was buried in the Israeli city Sfat. So, as I explained before, Sfat is an important Kabbalistic center. So, the choice of Sfat as a burial place enforces the special position as authentic Kabbalist Berg claimed for himself. So, his gravesite may well become a new destination for pilgrimage of Kabbalah Centre students. His burial has already attracted thousands of international Kabbalah students, as you can see here on the slide, and even some celebrities. So like Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, as you can read here in the quote. So visits of the grave are integrated into the offer of the Kabbalah Centre too, besides other sacred places of Judaism like the gravesite of Shimon Bar Yochai and Yehuda Ashlag, or the last resting places of the patriarchs in Hebron. Pilgrimage now lead to the gravesite of Berg too, who has already been venerated as saint by his followers during his lifetimes. So the construction of the Kabbalah Centre as a spiritual school of universal teaching of wisdom is brought to perfection in this sanctification of its former spiritual leader. So the last example I will present you are the energy tours of the Kabbalah Centre. So the universalization of Jewish practices to make them more accessible for a non-Jewish audience becomes obvious in the example of the energy tours too. So in the description of those tours, a specifically secular vocabulary is used, so that references to Judaism may be avoided and aspects of self-improvement can be underlined. On the website of the center as a combination of pilgrimage, group travel, adventure holiday, and spiritual self-discovery. So each of the tours is led by a Kabbalah Center teacher, that's important, who act as a tour guide. So the spiritual aspect of the experience is highlighted with the help of Kabbalistic meditation and Jewish rituals. So I quote the center homepage: each adventure we design combines spiritual learning, energy connection at sacred sites, and meditation during opportune window of time. So the collective singing of Jewish songs and the dancing near to each other during these events are an important factor to strengthen the feeling of belonging and the loyalty to the Kabbalah Centre. A few words at least. So the Kabbalah Centre offers Jewish traditions like pilgrimages to sacred places of Judaism, detaches them from their Jewish context. Therefore, the purpose of the energy of tzaddikim tours isn't the identification with Judaism or upholding Jewish traditions. Through the collective activities, trips to sacred places, conducting religious practices like praying, singing, dancing, or reading the Zohar together, the cohesion of the group and the identification with the Kabbalah Centre is meant to be enforced. So the tours and events I described in this presentation are good examples for religious tourism in the way Stausberg and Turner understand this concept. So from the participants' perspective, various motivations can be identified to take part in such a tour. For example, the curiosity to get to know foreign cultures are linked to the personal spiritual quest for meaning and for self-improvement. So in that way, the participants become half pilgrim, half tourist. But besides this personal level, the energy tours convert spiritual experiences into a mass event in which entertainment, advertisement, and spirituality seemingly don't include each other. So furthermore, these activities fulfill a simple basic need of humans to be part of a community. Thank you very much for your attention.